Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little for the 14th episode of Weekly Poker Hand. I appreciate you guys all sticking with it so far. If you guys like this podcast, please let me know. Please review it on iTunes and post comments. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys may have. So this hand is from the $25,000 buy-in World Poker Tour main event that took place at Bellagio a few years ago. This hand is a little bit old because now they do the World Poker Tour event at Borgata. However, I think it illustrates a key point that most players don't necessarily think about. So in this hand, I have 8-7 suited from early position. As you see, the blinds are 2,000, 4,000. I have 340,000 chips. So we'll call it 85 big blinds or so. So I'm okay with raising 8-7 suited. I think you could also just fold. But if you look around my table, I do have a few weak players. I have a bad loose aggressive player. I have a decent player. So I think this is a spot where I should probably just go ahead and raise. And when I raise, I am going to raise small. So I make it 9,000. Next guy folds, the player in the low jack seat, who is a decent player, and I guess I should quantify him more than just a decent player. He's a guy who thinks he's better than he is. I feel like he has had some success. He does pretty good. He's certainly a winner in $10,000 buy-in tournaments in general. But I feel like this player thinks he's really good at hand reading and is not afraid to make big calls or big folds based on his hand reading. And this is really the type of player who I like playing against because this was me whenever I was coming up in poker. I know exactly how this guy thinks because this was sort of like the last model of me. Players are constantly getting upgraded and you're constantly getting better and learning more things. And it's sometimes hard for me to get in the mind of an absolute amateur because I have not been an absolute amateur in a very long time. But against players who are pretty good, and I know pretty much how they think, I definitely like playing with them. Although, of course, I'd rather play with just total amateurs because you make your money from playing with weak players. And this guy certainly isn't weak, but I think I generally know what he's going to be doing. So I made it 9,000. He makes it 23,000. He only has about 60 big blinds to start the hand, 240,000 chips. So I don't love this scenario, but with a hand that flops amazingly well, which 8-7 suited does, I think it's fine to call. I could also 4-bet, but I don't really think this guy is going to be too out of line pre-flop. I mean, certainly he's good enough to know that he should be 3-betting me with a polarized range. The player's good. He's certainly not bad by any means. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's 3-betting me with a lot of junkier hands. But at the same time, he could also just be doing it on the tight side. So if I do call, I'm going to be looking to make a lot of plays on a decent amount of flops. I don't really think I'm going to be check folding too often unless the board comes all high cards. The flop comes ace of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 3 of spades. So I have middle pair and a backdoor flush draw, which is pretty good. However, whenever your opponent does 3-bet you, you really don't want to go crazy on an ace-high board because most people who are 3-betting have an ace. That's just the way it works. People 3-bet hands with an ace in them, especially if they are 3-betting with a polarized range. This guy could be 3-betting ace-2 offsuit and stuff like that, which he's never really going to find a fold, I don't think, in normal circumstances. So I'm probably not going to go too crazy on this board. If he bets the flop, I'm probably going to call and see what happens. So he actually checks behind, which is sort of weird. When he checks behind, what that tells me is that he almost certainly has a marginal showdown value hand that he doesn't want to bet the flop and get raised with. So that's going to be something like a pair, maybe kings through nines on the ace-8-3, or he probably has a weak ace. And that could probably be something like ace 10 or worse. So against that range, what should I do? Should I just check down and give up, or should I try to bluff him off of it? And the question then becomes, what will my opponent perceive as strong such that he finds a fold with those hands? Because some players, when they check behind the flop, they are almost never folding the turn of the river. And I kind of fear this player may fall in that category. Like, he knows that I know what he has, but he just doesn't care. He's going to assume that I know what he has, so I'm going to bluff him. Or, by the same note, he may think that I know what he has, but he may assume that I will never bluff him. So he can check behind the flop, and then if I bet the turn and river, he may just assume I just have the best hand and I'm trying to get value. So this type of player, I think what he's going to view as strong is smaller bets. And most people, when they run bluffs, they try to run huge bluffs. But quite often against players who are pretty good thinking players, you can get away with very small bluffs. And this is not something I recommend very often. But in this scenario, I think it's going to be pretty good. So my plan is to turn my hand into a bluff. I'm going to try to bet small on the turn and then small on the river. And I want to make my hand look exactly like I have something like ace queen or ace king. I want to look like I am trying to get called. And I think if this player thinks I'm trying to get called, he's going to find a fold with a lot of that range. And I think his check behind on the flop really does narrow him to either that range, just total trash like king, queen, or maybe the nuts, in which case if he does have the nuts, notice these small bluffs save money compared to a bigger bluff. You'll see a lot of players when they decide to bluff in this spot. In my shoes, they bet like 45,000 on the turn and then shove the river or something like that. And what that does is it makes your range much more polarized, meaning that it's going to be really good hands or really bad hands. But in this scenario, I think by betting smaller, I'm representing really good hands and mostly marginal, pretty good made hands, like the top pair. And I think my opponent will think that. So that's my plan. Whenever I make this turn bet, I already know if he calls, I'm betting most rivers, which he does call the turn. Rivers of 4 diamonds, which is actually a good river card because I could somehow have a 5. I bet 35,000 and my opponent thinks for a while and then folds. So I bet 35,000 on the river into a fairly sizable pot. Looks like the replayer messed up on me. We'll just talk about it as we go. Yeah, I bet 35,000 on the river, which is fairly small. And again, I really want to reiterate that you need to think about what is your opponent going to perceive as strong. Like, what is strong to him? And if you know for a fact that your opponent thinks one specific play is very strong, you really want to make that play whenever you're bluffing. And it's going to be different for every player. Some players are going to think all ends are strong. Some players are going to think tiny bets are strong. And you need to work hard to figure out your opponent, figure out what your opponent's going to think is a powerful line. So on the river, yeah, the pot was 100,000 or so, or 110,000. I bet the 35,000, so maybe a fourth pot or so. And it may sound insane, but my opponent did fold ace-7 of diamonds. He thought for forever and then folded it face up and said, "Oh, I know you got me." And in his mind, he thinks that he made a really good laydown. But in reality, he made just a terrible laydown because when I take this line against this specific opponent, I'm probably going to be bluffing. And it's interesting to note that if I had a value hand like pocket eights, so for a set, I probably would have bet big on the turn and then shoved the river because I think that guy's going to then think that that is a weak line. So because I know how my opponent's going to play and how he's going to perceive me and how he's going to perceive my bets, I can just do the exact opposite and do extraordinarily well. Of course, the problem with this, or the problem with my play, is that it becomes very exploitable. If my opponent knows what I'm doing, he will crush me. So similarly to how I'm crushing him in this spot, because I'm going to get paid when I have the nuts, I'm going to get folds when I don't have the nuts, he's going to be able to do the exact opposite to me, because if he knows that I only take this line with a bluff, he can just never fold. But at the same time, if it becomes a big leveling game. And I've worked hard recently on trying to get more out of line and figure out what I need to be doing to really take advantage of players. And against some players who are really, really good, you just need to play a game theory optimal strategy. And I've worked hard on my game, and I generally know what that is. Of course, no one has solved it yet, but I think most very good players are capable of playing a strategy like that. But until you're at the very highest level, most players are sort of playing by feel and doing what they think is right. But you have to recognize what you think is right is not necessarily right. And that's something that a lot of players have a hard time grasping. They're like, oh, I've been taught to do this. I think this is good. Therefore, this must be good. And that's not necessarily true. So this guy, I had the general idea in my head that he thought the small bets were very strong and trying to get called. So I flipped that on his head, ran it as a bluff, and got a fold from his top pair and probably every other hand that's similar to that. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you like these hand replays, I strongly suggest you start making your own. You can do that at sharemypair.com. They have an application for your iPhone and Android device. It's allowed me to present all of these hands to you. So check it out and let me know what you think. If you like this, again, like I said, please leave a review. And if you hate it, let me know what I can do better, because I want you guys to learn from this. I want it to be a good way for you guys to get educational content that's not too long, not too bland, and not too boring. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys next time. This has been Jonathan Little for Weekly Poker Hand. Thanks a lot.